Three Tenses of Friendship by Sunlight Rays. The Final Speech. Twilight Sparkle anxiously paced behind the curtains, her hose engraving footprints into the carpet below her. "I don't know if I can do this," she muttered as she continued to pace around the room. "Relax, Twi. The creatures of Equestria have dealt with situations much worse than this. I'm sure they can deal with your speech just fine," Spike reassured her as he leaned back in his chair. "But there's just so many things that could go wrong. What if they don't take the news well? What if they don't want me to step down? What if they begin protesting, Spike? They could start a rebellion to stop me from resigning," Twilight shouted, her breaths becoming shorter and shorter. Spike watched her as she began to hyperventilate. Strands of hair were starting to stick out of her mane as her pupils shrank to pinpricks. He let out a sigh before getting out of his chair. This was a situation he'd been dealing with as long as he could remember, and he knew exactly what to do. He walked over to her and gently put a claw on her shoulder. "Hey, it's gonna be all right. Take a deep breath in and out," he said, guiding Twilight's calming routine as she controlled her breathing with a hoof on her chest. Slowly the exercise took its effect on her, her mane returning to its normal flowing self, while her pupils expanded back to their usual size. She took in one last deep breath, held it before letting it out. "Thank you. That helped a lot. I don't know what I would do without you." "Nah, don't mention it. I've been doing that for the past, what, 300 years? Honestly, much of my life has been making sure that you didn't lose your head in your frequent panic attacks," Spike teased, winking at Twilight. "Hey! I think you're forgetting something, mister. Remember all the times that I had to take care of you while you were still growing up?" Twilight shot back, pointing a hoof at the accuracy Drake and faking a glare. Spike chuckled, holding his claws up. "Relax, I was only teasing. Anyway, my point is that you shouldn't worry about this. You're prepared for this, like you always do. You made sure all the political systems were in place, and you even announced you'd be stepping down. If the ponies were okay with it then, I don't see why they wouldn't be okay with it now." Twilight gracefully nodded. "That is a good point. There's no reason for them to be upset with me stepping down. Not when they had all the time to object. You do know how to calm me down, Spike. Thanks for that." Spike waved a dismissive claw. "Don't mention it. As I said, it's what I do." Just then a voice called out for Twilight. "Your Highness, it is time. Are you ready?" Twilight's assistant asked as she stepped into the room from beyond the curtains. Twilight took in a deep breath before turning to answer her. "Yes, Inknote. I think I'm ready as I'll ever be." Twilight then walked towards the curtains, which opened sideways as she stepped out into the balcony below. Immediately the late afternoon sun greeted her, its warm, pleasant rays comforting her as she looked down at the palace square below. There they were, thousands of creatures filling the square as they awaited their princess. Instantly they became quiet, the silence spreading throughout the crowd. They then roared up, cheering and shouting, and clapping for the leader who brought peace and prosperity to their nation. Twilight smiled upon them. It was a soft, serene smile, one she wore for the first time in what felt like years. Her heart thrummed inside her chest, her emotions too many and too intense to be described by mere words. Tears filled her heart, all her feelings and memories provoked by a sight before her tugging on her heartstrings. They were her subjects, ones that she looked over and cared for over the centuries. Seeing them cheer for her reminded her of just how proud she felt for them, and instantly all her fears and woes magically disappeared. Then, off in the distance, she saw two alicorns hovering over the heads of the citizens, one white and the other a midnight blue. Celestia and Luna had also come to hear Twilight's final speech. "Just like you said you would," Twilight thought, as she gazed upon them, smiling at the former princesses, even though she knew they wouldn't be able to see her. Slowly the cheers and claps died down, and silence filled the square once more. However, a certain air of anticipation now hung over the crowds, waiting for Twilight to begin her final speech. She took in a deep breath, held it, and began to speak. "Citizens of Equestria," Her voice rang out into the open, clear vibrance, echoing throughout the crowd below. Today we have gathered for a special occasion, one which will mark the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. I would like for us to remember one thing. This progress was made not on my own, but with the help of countless others that contributed to friendship, one way or another. Friendship is magic. That we all know. As a princess of friendship, I can attest to that. And that is a lesson I did not learn myself. There were 5 best friends to help me along the way. 5 best friends that always stayed by my side no matter what. Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, and Rarity, each represented honesty, loyalty, laughter, kindness, and generosity. These 5 girls have been my best friends ever since the day I went to Ponyville under Princess Celestia's orders. They are still my best friends, and they will always be, no matter what. It's what they told me when time itself came between us. It's what I tell myself now, and it's what I will be saying in the future. She took a short pause, then continued. Even after my friends passed, their values stayed with us. Since their time, we have undergone many changes. Generations of element bearers have come and gone. While we explored outside of the world we knew and found uncharted lands and races, Equestria became more diverse than ever as new creatures from all over the world mixed into our society. And yet, even with all the differences between all the different creatures living together, we've had very little serious conflicts. The spirits and virtues my friends established continue, and with them we maintain harmony. There were times when crises struck, times when all seemed lost against the forces of nature we couldn't control, when Manhattan fell to the strongest earthquake we had ever seen, when an eldritch monster from the Everfree stormed Ponyville, threatening to destroy everything and everyone in its path, when a rogue lightning storm struck Whitetail Woods and caused the biggest forest fire ever recorded. Even in these bleak times, friendship became our hope, the lighthouse that guided our way. Out of the storm of despair, creatures lined up to donate their blood for those injured in the Manhattan earthquake, while providing shelter for those who lost their homes. The citizens of Ponyville came together and fought against the monster, driving it back into the Everfree. Everyone worked together during the Whitefall Woods fire to put out the flames, saving the woodland and its countless inhabiting creatures. Twilight paused once more, swallowing as she prepared for the next part of her speech. As a ruler of Equestria, as an overseer of all the events occurring in this country, watching you overcome various obstacles without the help of the elements or any assistance from me has made me prouder than ever. From friendship you have learned and done so much, each and every achievement from outshining those made by me all those years ago. You have proven yourselves ready to have finally embraced the lessons of friendship and be able to pass them down from one generation to the next. You have shown that you are able to solve problems without assistance. Seeing that made me realize I had completed my role, that I had successfully spread the lessons of friendship to not only those living in this nation, but also to those outside of Equestria. This revelation led me to make the decision that is the reason we've all gathered here today. From this moment, I officially dissolve the position of the throne of Equestria, effective immediately. Twilight paused momentarily, letting that last final sentence sink in. Silence reigned throughout the square as the crowds below processed what had just been said, a small murmur rippling through the masses. After the whispers had passed, Twilight resumed her speech. The decision to resign was not an easy one to make, nor was it made lightly. I spent many a night strolling the halls of the palace, wondering if this was truly the right thing to do. I was worried that stepping down would prevent me from being able to protect my subjects. I was worried that in the absence of a leader who focused on friendship, a dictatorship might be established. I was worried that I might have been mistaken and that my job, in fact, was not over yet. Such worries were vanquished on one night when, under the disguise of an ordinary Pegasus, I left the palace and wandered the streets of Canterlot. Everywhere I went, I could feel the magic of friendship flowing in the air. No one lied to each other, nor did they leave each other's sides in times of difficulty. Laughter filled every house and every alley. Neighbors kindly looked after each other and generously shared needed items. That night I realized that I worried too much. All my concerns about the possibility of a negative outcome were answered at that very moment. I made my decision. From that night to this very moment, through all the preparations that were made for this day, I have never had doubts as to whether Equestria would maintain itself after my abdication. With perfect certainty, I have confidence in your abilities to guide yourselves, for you have shown that friendship was, still is, and ever will be, magic. Her voice began to tremble as her speech neared its end, tears threatening to rise in her eyes again. She knew what was coming, but she pressed on. It was an honor to be your princess, but it was a bigger honor to be your friend and watch all of you grow and mature. She paused momentarily, lowering her head as she swallowed back her tears. She wanted this moment to last forever, to just stand there and keep lovingly looking at her subjects that made her so proud. But she knew that it had to be done, and so she raised her head and lit her horn. She lifted her crown and her petrol over her head and lowered them onto the ground next to her. Then she croaked out her last two words. Thank you. Instantly the crowd exploded into applause, those with wings soaring up into the air as they clapped with their hooves and claws, while others rocked their hooves against the ground. They cheered and cried for their ex-princess, shouted her name with heartfelt gratitude for all the things she had done for them. Twilight smiled once more as tears freely cascaded down her cheeks, her tears blurring out the image of the creatures chanting her name. She blinked the droplets away, her sight clearing for a short time as she tried to capture the scenery below her with her constantly blurring eyes as much as possible. Thank you so much, everyone, she whispered, even though she knew they couldn't hear her amongst their cheers and claps. Then she looked up. Her blurry sights, she saw 5 silhouettes against the western horizon, smiling at her as the sun slowly crept down beneath the surface. Twilight was certain that they were just a trick of her mind, a combination of her emotions and the shadows of clouds. She didn't blink them away as she turned and headed back in. As she stepped inside, she was greeted by Spike, as well as Celestia and Luna waiting for her. Twilight wordlessly pulled Celestia into a tight embrace, leaning her head against her former mentor's shoulder. I missed you, she whispered, tears running down her face. I missed you too, Twilight. It's been a long time since we talked face to face, hasn't it? Celestia responded. Returning the gesture, she held Twilight against her. Twilight silently nodded. Did I do it right? Did I make the right choice? Celestia gently patted Twilight's back, comforting the younger alicorn. Yes, you did. It's never easy to see your subjects outgrow you, and yet it is the proudest ending any leader can hope for. And it is an even more noble ending for one to let go of power and step down of her own violation. You have achieved a finale that is both admirable and noble, one that you should rightfully be proud of. Luna chimed in as she walked over to nuzzle Twilight. Not to mention all you've done for Equestria. After working yourself to the bone for 3 centuries, I think you've earned yourself a bit of a break, Spike added as he joined in on the group hug. Twilight silently nodded, merely standing there and feeling the warmth of her friends were giving her. I missed them, she whispered again. A few moments later, I missed my friends. I saw them when I saw the sunset, after finishing my speech. I know that they were just shadows playing tricks on me, but I didn't want to believe it. We miss them too. All we can do, though, is to make sure that we carry on their legacy, Celestia replied as she held Twilight tight. Which you have done an excellent job of. As we've already said, you have ensured that friendship will never be forgotten in this world, Luna added. Twilight quietly nodded without saying a word. She then slowly broke the hug, her face streaked with tears, and her eyes swollen red. Thank you. I feel a bit better now. I don't want to step down because of how happy I felt looking at my subjects growing from friendship, but I had to do it. It was for the greater good, after all. That it was. And, as Spike said earlier, you've earned yourself a break, Twilight Sparkle. Now you're free to spend your time however you wish to. May it be with friends, or traveling around the world, or just simply relaxing on your own, said Luna. Well, I was thinking about going to Donut Joe's with Spike after the speech was over. Twilight trailed off, a smile forming on her face as Spike looked up in surprise. Well then, that sounds like a lovely idea. Wouldn't you agree, sister? Luna inquired, to which Celeste eagerly agreed. Then we shall head over there and enjoy the donuts in celebration of Twilight officially stepping down from her office, she said, with exaggerated seriousness, eliciting a giggle out of Twilight. The two sisters lit their horn, and with Spike disappeared in a flash of light. Twilight prepared to follow suit, lighting her horn as she readied the teleportation spell. Then she turned her head to look out the window one last time. There she saw the orange sky giving way to purple, the burning sun sending out its last rays of the day and creating a picturesque scenery, and among the shadows of red-tinted clouds she saw them once more. One by one, 5 faces appeared on the horizon, distinctly different from each other, yet harmonious together. They all had different smiles, yet they were the same in that Twilight could see the love for her in them. And so she softly smiled back at them, then teleported away in a flash. For once she felt proud of herself. The end. Thanks for listening.